I live in a small town on an island off the coast of New Zealand. I don't think anybody except our townspeople know we exist. Yeah. New Zealand. The place our brother country, Austria, says is full of, sheep fuckers. The place America thinks is Australia. And the place that the world thinks is next to Atlantis and opposite Narnia. All that's nonsense, of course, save for the fact that we do actually have sheep fuckers. Not like sheep fuckers as in sheep shaggers. I'm talking about sheep fuckers as in sheep-looking fuckers. Look, I'll cut the expletives out from now on because what I'm about to divulge is a serious life or death situation involving Maurice, the curly man sheep that ate my friend's arm. More importantly, I'll cut the language because the Aussies started the swearing business first, for the record, and we're better than that. I currently reside in a harbor town in the South Island home to fewer than 1,000 people, and I've spent most of my life here. Small town that you have to reach by taking the highway from the central city through a dingy tunnel in a mountain. Once you're out the other side, the fresh air that rolls off the bay is breathtaking. Most of the houses here face the small bay in the middle. The buildings sit staggered in height from the mountainous ranges down to the seagull squawking body of water beneath. I hope that I'm not painting a picture of Greece at the moment, because it certainly isn't that. A lot of the houses are severely weathered. Some are still wearing scars from the earthquake that shook them a decade earlier, something that wasn't kind on cliffside homes. But despite this, little is where I call home. When you finally come to the mouth of the tunnel and stare into the crystalline blue waters below, when you finally take in that fresh air, when you finally witness her charm, it puts you in a trance. That's why I've stayed. A few years ago, though, the only tunnel in and out of the town collapsed. To this day, it's still closed. Everybody that once lived here still remains here. Everybody that had owned a boat by the port has taken off and never returned. Some have tried to simply climb over the mountain and cascade down the back to the main city. Police have found their bodies scattered in scorched afternoon suns between flower beds and daisies. Something's stopping people from leaving town that way, too. I've had a handful of people arrive at my doorstep asking me to deliver letters for them to the outside world. They told me that they've tried to throw a message in a bottle into the water, but something enormous always manages to swallow it up before it disappeared into the horizon. In summary, we're stuck. And everyone's growing tired of one another, especially tired of Jim. And no one really likes Jim. Coincidentally, the date of the collapse of our tunnel was around the same time Maurice, the man-sheep, started being spotted around town. Oh, and Mrs. Landry's cat turned translucent. I mean, cool in theory. Horrifying in person. I'm beginning to think something locked down Little on purpose. Everyone knew me as Caffey Cole during the time after the tunnel collapsed, but before the strange occurrences began. When the golden sun was still hanging low over the misty bay, my morning as the little postman began. The zigzagging around the houses that met the water was the easiest stage before I had to climb the roads to reach the letterboxes that were darted up the mountainside. That's how the nickname came in. The job was tough on the legs, that's for sure. But damn, were they toned. Caffey Cole. Thomas, real name Tomothy, but let's not get into that, is my scraggly, black-haired, and gawky postage partner. I always start my route at the bottom of the town by the harbor with my bundle of letters, and I work my way up. He starts at the top of the hill and works the road downward towards the bay. We usually meet around the halfway point outside of Fritz's pizza joint. However, that mid-morning, the same morning that I had seen the pant-wearing pig walking on two legs by the pier, Thomas was a no-show. I was, of course, already winded from my route, and hot red, with a clenched fist having to climb up the rest of the way, try to find the lanky son of a bitch. "G'day, Cole!" My stick for a partner was yelling at me from upon the grassy hilltop overlooking the city. "Tom, the fuck?" I called back. "Sunshine sure is lovely on top, man." His figure was a thin silhouette against the backdrop of the lamp in the sky. What happens, he threw a thumb over the top of his shoulder, if I take a hike down the trap back to the city? Leave Little. Haven't you heard? People don't come back. Ain't that the point? I couldn't see his shadowed face, but I knew he was smirking. The wind blustered up my coat and took away some of the heat that the summer daylight had left on my skin. Just come down, it isn't safe. He was shaking his head. No, maybe it isn't. But sure as shit beats living here, Cole. Something weird's going on. Why hasn't anyone come for us? Clouds began to roll over the sun, and I briefly caught a look of his gaunt face. Melissa from the pizza place tells me every time she turns on the TV, static or no static, the room begins to feel heavy. Like magnets on the ground, pulling everything down twofold. Told me it hurts to even walk when it's on. He lit a cigarette. Oh, and the letters, Cole. The damn letters. You haven't noticed? Tunnel fucking collapsed. So tell me, friend, where are all the goddamn letters coming from? I wanted to say something. In fact, my lips may have moved to begin to form words, but deep down, I knew he was right. How was there so much mail, anyway? Tom tucked his smoke between his lips before he swiveled his side bag to his hip. Let's find out, shall we? He pulled out a singular card-sized envelope from one pocket. Don't, Tom, we'll lose our work. Ah! He tore the paper sleeve open. Listen to yourself, man. The contents were in his hand then, his eyes scanning the words on paper within. He was mumbling quick, unformed words as he read. Thick muscle meat. Yeah. Bones. Grind. Yeah. What does it say? I said. Tom slowly folded the letter back into the torn sleeve and deposited it back inside his mailbag. He threw away the cigarette butt into the unkept grass before he came cascading down the hill in a jog back towards the road. Yep, he said mid-stride. Tom? I asked to his back as he was already walking back down the hill without saying a word. All the spirit he had for leaving Little had escaped him with whatever he read. He turned around and clasped his hands together in a clap, like a father about to give a birds and the bees talk. Yep. He shot me 2 finger guns. You're fucked. I leaned over to him and pulled the letter out from his mailbag. It slid easily. The handwriting inside was messy and hard to make out, broken and misspelled words littering the page. It also turns out the letter was addressed to one Maurice Jenkins, from an unreadable name. The sender's address was 39 Aberfeldy Lane, which was near the bay. Whoever this envelope was from was sending a letter from the beginning of my route to the beginning of Tom's route. The contents made my stomach swirl. Something from deep in my throat lurched acid with each waver of my eyes against the text. To bluntly summarize the letter, Mr. Jenkins here wants to eat me and grind my bones for soup. Our old friend, the sender, let's call him Mr. Scribblename, overheard people around town calling me Mr. Caffey Cole and thought I'd make a tender meal. They both mistakenly thought that I would hand-deliver the letter, and right now I'm probably supposed to be sliced into cubes into a boiling pot of beef stock. Luckily for me, Tom is responsible for delivering the Upper Town mail, and luckily for him, he was suddenly inspired to run away from Little. I swallowed the ball in my throat and broke the silence. This is bull, Tom. You think, Cole? He smiled. You think? After everything we've seen? He shook his head. If you want to find out, go ask him then. His finger drifted to the farmhouse and the mound behind us. The first letter on his route to deliver would be the highest priority in the town. Maurice's house. Come with me, I said, my voice quiet and distant. I coughed. Come with me, more sternly, this time. Tom and I trotted up the field, through the wavering grass, with our 2 mailbags bobbing in the wind. The porch creaked as we stood outside under the shade. Bells hung free from the posts that held up the roofing, chiming as a gust brought under warm air from the scorching field. "Tom?" I said. "They're not opening up because we look like two Jehovah's Witnesses. Get away from me, dumbass." He made a noise through his teeth as he stepped down from the porch. The thinly boarded plank door of the farmhouse suddenly peeled open. A man emerged from the shadowed lounge inside. His eyes looked almost golden as they reflected the sun and planted wheat from outside. His hair was white and curly, paled, slightly blonde, showing more of his earlier years. "Oh, chap," he spoke. "How can I help you?" Tom was peeking over my shoulder behind me. Mr. Jenkins?" His eyes narrowed and flicked between us for a while. Yes, that's me. What's the trouble?" I looked back at Tom. At that moment, we weren't exactly sure what it was that we wanted to accomplish by talking to the man. It's about your letter." I was spitting nonsense on the fly. "We're from the post office. It appears a few letters that were addressed to you were damaged in the mail." "Oh my," Maurice is frowning. "How does such a thing happen? Please." He gestured an arm in. "Do come in. The wind is quite loud. Old ears, you see." And so, we went inside. Help us, we went inside. To us, Maurice was a perfectly normal old man until he served us some tea. I'm fine," Tom and I said when he brought the pot over to us. "Are you sure? It's not bad." Tom, the jumpy prick, almost jumped out of his seat. "Excuse me?" "It's quite a tasty leaf," he nodded. "It's not bad." I began to slide my chair out from under the table, too. "It's not bad." Green slop ejected from the old man's mouth onto the oak table as thick white locks began to spread across his skin like wildfire. Any peach-colored flesh was disappearing like a puddle on a summer afternoon, easily replaced by spreading tufts of curly hair. We made for the door, but the handle didn't twist open. My heart felt like it was going to give out. The thing's golden eyes behind us began to bloom wide, black, horizontal pupils, the globes of a sheep. Tom was kicking the door to no avail. The beast was at his heels. I made a right for the hallway, tumbling over fallen chairs as I went. Tom saw where I was going and tried to follow me, but he was too late. The snout of the thing clasped over his forearm like a metallic brace. Teeth once meant to chew grass dug into his flesh like it was wet mud, snapping and cracking his bones loudly, and in one spurt of hot pain like fireworks inside of his skin. With one quick hurl, I threw the boiling tea over the beast's eyes. It began screaming like a man screaming like a wild dog, but it was already too late for Tom. His arm had come free from where it had once been. Syrups, strings, and nerves. He was tossed onto the floor alongside his mailbag, staining the letters that he had yet to deliver. The thing's rotten bedroom smelled like decay, and I tossed an elbow into the window, letting wind bellow through the dusty farmhouse. Tom and I managed to roll out and jog back to town. I'm glad Tom lived that afternoon, for if he hadn't, I'd be alone. And worst of all, it'd be a real bitch to deliver double the letters. Those are about all the wild things that happened to us that afternoon. I want to come back to tell a few more stories, though, for there are many more. If I were to tell you the oddities of the town, I wouldn't know where to start. I heard from someone that the water here is beginning to freeze from the taps, no matter how warm it is out. Someone else told me that they've seen a few men in spacesuits patrolling the hills at midnight with flashlights. I don't know why the tunnel's still blocked off after all this time, and I don't know why Mrs. Landry's cat is reportedly see-through. Hell, well, why people in town are turning into unrecognizable horrors. And for now, I need to deliver some mail. Hey there, Postman Cole again. I'm responsible for delivering mail to the lower half of our strange bayside town a little. Mind you, there's quite a lot of mail for a place where the only way in or out of the town is collapsed. The highway tunnel. This happened a few years ago, trapping all residents inside the bay. Did I mention that there probably is a few beasts living around which have elected to communicate by archaic scribbles? So yeah, I'm quite busy as a postman. But apparently, according to Mrs. Landry, I am also the police. The old lady came barging into my post office at around 8:15, carrying her arms in a cradle. What's the matter, Mrs. Landry? Oh, it's about my cat. I want to find out what's wrong with her. Her wiry eyebrows danced as she spoke. She was one of those eyebrow dancers. The pile of letters that I had pushed to the side looked like a sad, flattened snowman. Where is she? She's here, honey. Her eyebrows were jumping. They were waltzing. And no cat, of course. Of course there was no cat. Oh. I put my hand over the back of hers. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Landry. Her eyebrows flattened into a frown. Is she... I looked around the room, pretending to see spirits. Is she here with us? Here in this room? The woman's expression looked as if I had just torn up her winning bingo card. Thin red lines blossomed over her forehead as she wrestled with the air for a while, scratches all etched into the wrinkled skin. Some time ago, such a thing might have given me a jump, but as it stands, in a peculiar town that often has rainy spells with a chance of bees, this was the least surprising thing I had seen all week. Will you quiet down? She snapped. You're scaring Cleo. I spent a while leaning over my desk, staring at her hugged arms, until I began to make out something. A shape. It was a heart of sorts. A tiny, beating heart suspended by nothingness. Enveloped by a glass-like veil. I could just barely make out clutching onto the front of her flowery blouse. Her eyebrows waved as if to say, I told you. She absent-mindedly stroked the invisible feline. All right. So I guess I'm Cole, postman, beast slayer, translucent pet vet extraordinaire. Listen, I'm sorry, Miss Landry, but I'm not the authorities. I'm just a mailman. Have you tried taking it up with them? Oh dear, she shook her head. Oh, I've tried. I can't make it to the upper town, not on these old legs, so I sent my granddaughter. She said the place is closed shut, that they're undergoing some kind of maintenance at the station. Again, I began sorting the envelopes by address. Okay, I'll go check out the station after my deliveries are done, Miss Landry, just for you. She nodded. Made to leave before stopping at the door as the bell chimed against the glass. Be careful, honey, especially careful around all those bodies and the goo. What? Hey! I yelled after her, but she was already gone. My eyes could only follow her sunflower-spotted top, wriggle in the wind as she crossed the street. I sat there for a while until I had finished sorting my papers with a screwed-up face. Goo? What on earth was she talking about? The letters slipped into my mailbag with ease. I fastened my blue and white postal hat on, as I did every morning before setting off to work, and then it hit me. I had no clue what the police station actually was. I mean, that's probably something I should have known. Little is a tiny place, and there's only one building, a handful of officers. On the other hand, there wasn't any maps of the roads here. You were just expected to know where everything was. Had it been because I only worked the bottom half of the city, close to the bay? Well, those streets I knew like the back of my hand. Nevertheless, with a face that was still stuck sour, I fastened my bag around my waist, and I stepped out into the hot summer street. I didn't know where the police station was, but I knew exactly who would. On my jog uphill to the hospital between the odd delivery, I had seen the usual weird things that had begun to sprout all around town. For one, outside Sleepy Bear Daycare, a few streets down around the block, I was stopped by a cacophony of giggling, which was nothing new, of course. But what was new was the splashing. A loud, fun splashing. I turned my head to find that the kids had spilled out of the center with leashes in their hands, taking toads that were as big as my hat out for a swim in the nearby fountain. I thought more people would stop and look. I mean, was I the only person seeing this? I suppose I did get a snort from an elderly man as he made his way past me. Children these days, he said, before proceeding to walk into the horizon that faced the sparkling sapphire water of the bay in the distance, using only his cane as an aid, which, for the record, was an onyx black cobra. It slithered on the small space below his feet as it met the ground, propelling him forward, or not. I'm still not sure. The strangest thing of all might have been the balding man I spotted on Western Avenue. He was in his 40s, the sun beaming down and shining off the space between his thin strands of blonde hair. He had begun to gather a crowd around a large red fire hydrant he had spray-painted an off-white bone. According to his yelping voice, along with his preaching grand gestures with his hands, the end was nigh. The water that once flowed free from our taps had turned to ice. Fish had begun to migrate upstream into our toilets. And for just $2, we could be blessed by drinking from the pure, untainted, non-apocalyptic water of the Western Avenue fire hydrant. But no, of course, that was just Jim. Yeah, he had been doing that sort of thing for a while, longer than the tunnel had been collapsed. We sort of just moved around him on the sidewalk, as you would a toppled tree or a spot of bird dropping. People were getting really tired of Jim. When I had finally reached the hospital, it was around 11:15. Tom was sitting up against his hospital bed, his face even more pale than usual, with skin feverish and darted with beads of sweat. Below him, what remained of his arm, bandaged in a white sling. "You took long enough," he croaked. I sat on the chair beside him. "Glad you're good. Tom, listen, I need your help with something, man." His frown was even more furrowed than Mrs. Landry's. "Cole, what the hell, man? I'm missing a goddamn arm over here." Yeah, you're right. No, I get that," I sighed. "But it could be worse. We could be missing our jobs." We sat and talked for a while. He was understandably angry, but I told Tom that there was something going on at the police station. I explained that we needed to check it out before little society inevitably collapsed into lawless chaos. And chaos was no good for postage deliveries. No postage deliveries meant no work, and no work meant we'll be shelling out the big bucks just to drink some fire hydrant water by the sidewalk. "You're insane, Cole," he began, slipping on his shoes. "No, really, you're insane. I'll show you where the police station is, and that's it." I gave him a thankful "I owe you one" nod, and before long, we were off. The few blocks before the police building were deserted. Seeing oddities was one thing, seeing absolutely no one, and little after this long, was something entirely. It was harrowing. Before us, at the end of Clive Street, was the building. It was grand, it was towering. I suppose in little, grand means it was 2 stories high with a garage. Most windows were boarded up, save for a few of the windows on the second floor, which were outlandishly dark for such a stunningly blue-skied morning. The door of the building rattled with a metallic clang as I knocked. No answer. I called out for a while, but no one opened up, just like the old lady had told me. I turned to my partner. "All right, lift me up on the balcony." "No, screw that, Cole. Stop being such a baby, Tom. I'm the one who has to deliver your bloody letters, man." He was mumbling curses as he bent a shoulder for me. This was definitely not a favor he was going to forget anytime soon. Hell, at this rate, he'd make me pay off my debt by watching that sci-fi movie about living in a computer simulation. The one with the green numbers. I mean, watch it again. Probably stoned this time. Damn. I crunched the smashed glass under my sneakers as I made my way across the balcony and in through the window. The first thing that hit me was the stench of rotten vegetables. Not human decomposition like Mrs. Landry had said, but it was foul. Secondary was the slime. It covered the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Big glops of sage goo that descended slowly with a viscous drip. My legs gave way as I began to climb down the stairs through the hallway. It was too much of the stuff. It was beneath my feet everywhere I looked. I almost came tumbling down through a window that had been luckily boarded up with wood. I reached the front door from the inside and opened the handful of locks with a clack. The sun outside was blinding when my eyes adjusted. I saw Tom staring at the green gunk on me, shaking his head with a pout, disapprovingly like I was a toddler, with just crayon on the walls. He knew what I was going to say. "No way, Cole." "But you need to help me look, seriously." "No way." "Fine, big baby." I headed back inside. If I could find something, anything at all, that would tell me if there was still some law enforcement alive and working in Little, I would be satisfied. I had to know. I had to know if I needed to prepare for the worst. The fire hydrant water. Better start making friends with Jim early and get the discounts. Newly homeless bum. Hello? I called. There might be an echo if the police station wasn't so inundated and insulated with green rubber. I went to turn the door handle to the armory. My hands came free, sticky and coated, webbed. Inside the armory was a man slumped forward from his office chair in front of the security camera set up, and beside the case full of guns. Below his neck was a tilted name tag. Rodney. Hey, sir. Everything all right in here? Nothing. My chest began to draw tight. Your, civilian clientele have been spilling over the post office for detective work. His face was sickly white. His lips stuck shut. Body probably cold. His voice... not even a zip. Probably fell asleep, huh? That's not static on the camera, sir. That's just, it's just goo. Nada. Without warning, the back of his blue uniform began to peel free from the thickly coated seat. He turned his head to me, his eyes revoltingly stripping free, lime fingers slipping out of his sockets like that of a snail, and if he saw me, I couldn't know. He was only groaning with liquid-filled throats, one overdue for a cough. "Tom!" I called. My ankle caught the leg of a body that I hadn't seen lying there in the mushy green carpet. I went falling onto my back, crawling then, not at all, lying flat. I tried to scream for Tom from where I was, but my shoulders wouldn't unstick. My shirt wouldn't come loose. It was sage quicksand, swallowing me, eating me, and with each breath, it felt like my heart was giving out. I wasn't a postman anymore. I was becoming something different, perhaps a paranormal investigator. And to be frank, as I stared up at the officer's hands, which hung loose, as growing, swerving lime green anacondas, I kinda hated my job. I heard Tom's steps running. Bless him, as bad as I had treated him up until that point, he was actually running. The arms of the officer had wrapped around my legs as thick, unkempt grapevines. I could feel my muscles beginning to squish, my bones beginning to creak. They were about to crack. "Fuck's sake, Cole, not this again," he sighed. "The gun case, in the armory!" Tom elbowed the thing in the head, and he pushed past into the room. The eyes of the beast went swiveling like long lime pendulums. My postage partner wrestled with the cage for a while, and before long he turned around, aiming down the sight as if out of a western cowboy flick. Click, click, bang! Wet chunks of green coated my tongue, my throat. Click, click, bang! It wouldn't die. Why wouldn't it? But Tom's great shooting brought me enough time to clamber to my feet. We stood there shaking for a while, watching the officer contort and grow. I took one of those long, unworldly pool noodle arms by its side and wrapped it around its head like a scarf, pulling until the thing's head popped free and rolled. "Pass me your lighter," I shouted. "Why?" "Tom, just give me it." He tossed the tiny chunk of metal from his pocket. I missed the catch, but it stuck to my shoulder like Velcro. I flicked it open, the flame came alive, and so did the room. The fire blossomed green, then blue as it burned the flesh of the reanimating monstrosity. For a while after that, we stood outside and watched the building engulf itself in flames before collapsing. That night, Tom and I decided to sit by the fireplace of the post office. We were safe from the molding goo upon our clothes. We drank bourbon that warmed our bellies, and thought of what was coming, and who we were turning into. I'm gonna be honest here. The whole ordeal was far from the strangest thing that's happened to me. It's been much more to see. Can only hope that my small bayside town holds up with no one to enforce law and order. And that Tom doesn't make me watch that movie with him again to pay off my debt. While the people are still scrambling to sell the rare orange-colored oranges at the market that they find amongst the invasive purple-colored breed that's taking over town, I'll still have more stories to tell. While there's still talk of Mrs. Jones's convenience store selling gum that makes customers grow eyes or see into the future, I'll definitely have more stories to tell. But for now, I need to take a shower to wipe the green muck away. After that, maybe deliver some mail. Perhaps investigate the paranormal, it seems. Sincerely, Postman Cole. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and thank you for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's podcast, and thank you for clicking the thumbs up, the subscribe, the follow, the bell, the whatever helpful thing there is on such a platform. If you want to find your nice Halloween horror audiobook to listen to this year, check out audible.com and look for MrCreepyPasta, because I got a whole bunch of books over there. Books like Tales from the Gas Station. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who is supporting me on Patreon. If you guys have been supporting me on Patreon, or if you're considering doing so, then know that I just added in a couple of cool things for the loyalty program because I found out that I could. I had no idea that I could do that. So now, you guys should be getting some cool things in the mail brought to you by Patreon that are pretty cool. They support the channel as well. Oh, getting to the point though, a huge thank you to patrons such as Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Bryon Arce, Bobby Karman, Stephanie Butler, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, William King, Heather McDonald, Reaper61167, Alex the Sandwich, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Ness69420, aisodoehtraed with 2 exclamation points, Nessie, Ronnie Hansen, Bardohawk764, Melancholy Corpse, Ferb, Harley, Billy Morrow, Madam Skullbunny, Sashi Suzaku, Grizzly Olsen.pro, Caden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, My Body Sounds Like Rice Krispies, Ashwood, Lord of the Weebs, Jay, Miss Exandra, Mr. Unsettling Spaghetti, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Azarine Fox, Fried Chicken 12, Freddy Krueger, Ty Nanny, Michael Scarborough, Infernal One, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Nels, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nina Smith, Nico Cayo, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trey Smiles, and Corey Kenshin. Thank you guys so much, so much for being a part of the Patreon and helping me keep the lights on and helping me get exclusive stories and everything that we do on the channel here. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it. Thank everybody in the description, and thank you guys who have stayed to this part of the video. It really means so much to me. I hope you all have a very happy Halloween and sweet dreams.